Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. White MMA fighter Michael Chandler is facing backlash over some comments that he made regarding the 2 black sons he adopted.
I'm not raising black children. I'm raising children. And whether you are black or you are white, no matter what race that you are, there are certain things about being a man and being a good man when it comes to character and integrity and safeguarding the helpless and sticking up for those who need it and being a good man of reputation. None of that has to do with skin color. Everything has to do with the character of the man. Probably not an answer that some people would say is important, but that's where the world has gone, where we think that the most important thing about us is our skin color or our gender or our political affiliation or all these different identity politics or the identities that we put on each other, when really we're just human beings on this earth. And there are certain things about being a good person that transcend skin color and age and sex and religion and all of those different things.
I love that answer.
Now, in a recent interview on an episode of The Sean Ryan Show, white male MMA fighter Michael Chandler talked about the 2 black sons he adopted, Hap in 2017 and Ace in 2022, and says that he's taking a colorblind approach to raising these 2 black boys. Now, according to the interview, Michael Chandler says he's not raising black children, he's just raising children, and he's just making these 2 boys' life that much harder. Now, as a heterosexual black man who was raised by a black father and with a black brother, I understand that the world is completely different for black men than it is for white men. And what this white male is basically doing is a disservice to these boys by trying to raise them to be so-called colorblind, because by raising them to be so-called colorblind, you are making them oblivious to all of the racism and white supremacy they are going to encounter in this world, because the whole religion of white supremacy is global. And if you are not aware of that system of white supremacy, what you are doing is basically setting that boy up for complete failure. And what's going to happen to these boys is that they're going to grow up to become men in crisis, like I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, because they are not being equipped with the proper male life skills and male survival skills that a black man needs to navigate life in this world, because in this world, it's a completely different world for a black man than it is for a white man. And a black man has to come equipped in order to navigate a course in life by understanding that when you are in this world, you're going to have to deal with the whole religion of white supremacy, and you're also going to have to deal with the culture of racism that is coming from that system of that religion of white supremacy. And the earlier a boy becomes aware of that religion of white supremacy and the system of racism it's a part of, the faster he can start learning how to identify situations that could basically be life and death. And what Michael Chandler is doing is basically putting these kids in jeopardy by saying he's going to raise them to just be children, because when it comes to black children, you are always going to be seen as black first, and you're not going to be seen as a child in any way, shape, or form. This is something that I learned growing up in the South Bronx, because when they see a black child, they don't see you as a child. No, they see you all as one big giant super brute, regardless of your age. And when you are a black boy, you have to understand how to move in these streets in order to be able to maintain your intangibles of black manhood, such as your dignity, such as your self-respect, and most importantly, your freedom. Because when it comes to being a black man of character, you have to understand that when in the system of white supremacy, they don't see you as a man of character. No, in the system of white supremacy, every black man is basically seen as a violent savage, and that's something that many people are going to see you regardless of race, because there are even black people who will see a black male as a violent black brute. And this is something that a boy has to learn before he goes out into this world. And if he doesn't learn this, what he's going to wind up having is a rude awakening. And that's what happens to many of these boys who are out here believing in the whole world of the rainbow. What happens is when they start believing that the world doesn't see them with skin color, they wind up getting their entire perception colored by the dark reality of life in the real world. Because in that real world where people are believing in this religion of white supremacy unconsciously, they see color all the time. And when they see color, their whole perception of you is not seeing you as another human being that they should respect or regard, but they see you as a threat. And what's happening here with these children who are going to be in the care of Michael Chandler is these poor kids are not going to be getting the life education they're going to need to survive in the world. Now, what I see what Michael Chandler is doing is just as bad as what I see Charlize Theron doing with her boys and Madonna doing with her boys. Basically, with the case of Charlize Theron, she's basically got these boys like their pets and is stripping them of their manhood and masculinity. The same thing way Madonna is stripping those boys of their manhood and masculinity. And in the case of Michael Chandler, I would say to dare that he's doing something worse, because from his paternalistic perspective, he's basically thinking he's raising these boys to be so-called good men. But the whole way a black man has to move in this world, if they don't get those male life skills or male survival skills, they're not going to be good men. No, they're going to be messed up men who are out here with at the least the individualized mindset, where they're sitting there thinking they're individuals, not understanding that white supremacy basically sees them as part of a group and use them as tools to divide and conquer black people. That's what happens to many of these black folks who are out here thinking that they're just children, as they're raised to be just children. They don't see that the world is racist, and the world is filled with racists who follow the religion of white supremacy and follow the religion of white supremacy to be anti-black, and are looking to go out here and use these kind of guys as pawns when they grow up to be the mouthpieces to promote anti-black racism. That's what sadly happens to a lot of black boys who wind up being raised by non-black people and white people. In some cases, they wind up getting a just twisted perception, and that makes it where they're not equipped to be able to navigate life in the world, because they're sitting there not understanding that you, again, are going to be seen as black. You are going to be seen as black in this world, and the way they treat black people is different than anybody is treated as men. And many of those same white men who sit there and talk about character, like Michael Chandler, many of these same white men will go and be racist, because the MMA social circles are filled with racists, and the whole UFC is filled with racists like your Conor McGregor and many others. And these boys are going to be in for a rude awakening if they enter the world of the UFC, where it's just filled with racists. Because I had a viewer tell me about all the racism that goes on in the UFC, And here you have a MMA fighter, Michael Chandler, talking about, oh, he's going to raise his kids to not be racist when the entire UFC is filled with racists. Make it make sense, because it's just not logical. I mean, it's not logical that you have someone who has received all the benefits of white supremacy raising black children, and he's sitting there saying he's not going to be teaching his children racism and white supremacy. When you receive all the benefits from the system of white supremacy, you see all of this racism and white supremacy going on, but he's not going to raise children to as related to making them not racist when you're basically in an organization that's filled with racist and white supremacists. I mean, it's just mind-boggling insane. But when it comes to the white supremacists, again, they live in a world of lies, and one of the parts of the world of lies is sitting there saying, oh, I'm not raising black children, I'm just raising children. Well, when I look at all those people who adopt black children like Madonna, Charlize Theron, I can see the anti-black racism that they participate in by emasculating those black boys and stripping them of their manhood, by going out here and making mockery of those black boys. I mean, I see the unconscious racism that they participate in as related to the raising of those boys, because had those women gotten white males, I guarantee you they possibly wouldn't do this, because those people in Hollywood would be questioning the way they're doing those white boys. And they only do this to the black boys because they don't see a black boy as human. And when I look at Michael Chandler, I don't see him seeing these two black boys as children. I just see him using them as attachments to virtue signal, and looking to use them as attachments to virtue signal that he's not racist, even though the organization, the UFC, that's had a lot of racists as related to their entire system. And again, the entire culture of the UFC, I believe, possibly has a lot of racists in it. I mean, and a lot of guys like Dana Brooke, who basically was seen on video possibly, again, punching out his wife. I mean, this is not a family group over at the UFC, and Michael Chandler basically comes across as a 21st century Mr. Drummond with his paternalistic view, and he's got his little Arnold and Willis Jackson to make it look like he's not a racist. But the way he's talking basically shows me he's not really concerned about the welfare of these children or competent to do this, because when it comes to black boys need a black man to show them a model of manhood, a black man to show them a model of black masculinity, which is completely different from white masculinity, and to show them the whole racist and white supremacist culture. I mean, you need a father in your life to show you the world for black men, because the world for black men is completely different. And I've seen that myself growing up as a young black boy who had a father and a brother in his life. And there are other guys out here like Mr. Superboy and Mad Black 80 who will tell you that a life for a black man is completely different, and you have to learn about life from a black man to understand our experience. Our experience as black men is completely different, and if I had a son, I would have to sit down and teach him about racism, teach him about white supremacy, teach him about little things like when you go to the store, you have to watch out for yourself, because they are watching you. No white man is going to tell you that when you go to one of these stores that there are people watching you, because they think every black person steals. There are things that a black man only learns from other black men in places like the black barber shop. I mean, life for a black man is completely different, and this is something people don't understand. Again, we deal with a completely different world. I mean, even with jobs, I mean, it's completely different. Because when I go looking for a job, I ran into racism with many of these companies, and I'm the only guy who can explain to him about the HR brick wall and all of those issues that black men deal with. I mean, when it comes to black men, our world has always been different ever since the days we came off those slave ships, and that's something that Michael Chandler, a white man, will never understand. he will never understand what it means to be a black man. And he's doing a disservice to these boys because when he raises these boys, again, he's coming from the paternalistic position of a slave master, like those who are a part of the slave plantations. He doesn't understand the world is different from the one that he came from, and that he has privileges and opportunities that a black man like myself will never have, as related to this world that is run under the religion of white supremacy. And from his godlike position, he will never understand that the world is different, and again, the world won't see him as a good man, even though he's saying he wants to raise the boy to be a good man. I'm a black man who many people say is a good man of character, but many people don't want to see that because they see black first. So I understand as a black man that the world is completely different. And when you don't raise boys to understand that the world is different for black people, you're basically setting those boys up not to be men of character, but to wind up becoming men in crisis. Now, if you want to learn why so many males wind up on a road to dysfunction where they never really actualize their potential, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Target. And if you want to learn how somebody can wind up becoming spellbound and trying to fit themselves into a black box that's acceptable to white people, you can pick up my novel Spellbound on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And if you want to see an positive example of black manhood and black masculinity, you can pick up my books, The Temptation of John Haynes, and the books of the John Haynes series, along with The Man Crisis and Spellbound, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and you can also find it at big box retailers like Walmart and Target. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can send a donation for a minimum of $15 to the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.